Well, if you didn't think the heat and humidity could get worse, it actually did today, with temperatures up in the middle and even the upper 90s, with those dew points hovering around 70. And the dew points are even going to go higher as we head into the weekend. It's very tropical in the eastern part of the United States. And we have a tropical wave moving through the Greater Antilles, and it looks like there's an increasing chance that this is going to become a tropical cyclone late in the weekend or early next week. We'll be talking about that and trying to find relief somewhere. Well, we'll give you relief here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. Brought to you by Tempest by Weatherflow. The revolutionary Tempest weather system is yours for the asking. Get one and join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. Easy to install. You run it off your mobile device. The link is on the descriptor to this podcast. Use that coupon code, Joe Rayo.
Summer 2024, Joe Chiaffi.
And if you do, you will get
10 big percent off. And considering that the stock market, the Dow Jones Industrials fell over 700 points today.
Well, at one point, it closed off the lows.
Oh, really? I heard it was down. It bottomed out at 717.
No, it closed just a little, like 498 points or something. But it did
Well,
it was down at one point about 2:15 this afternoon. It was down 750.
look, if it goes down, whether it goes down one or 300 or 700, anytime you can get 10% off anything, that's a good deal.
Right. Well, I don't argue with you
Yeah.
on that point. Um, so we are. I was looking at the temperatures around 1 o'clock this afternoon, and I was seeing all these middle 90s all over the place, and dew points in the lower 70s. And in spite of all of that, there's nothing on the radar tonight to speak of, which we kind of thought that would be the case, that today we would get a break from any shower or thunderstorm activity. I don't think that's going to be the case the next 3 days, and I'm thinking thunderstorms late tomorrow into tomorrow night, again later Saturday into Saturday night, and then we've got this stalling cold front that's going to be hanging along the coast on Sunday. That front, Joe, is going to be really important with regards to this tropical wave. If it winds up becoming a tropical depression or a tropical storm, that position of that front is going to be very important with regards to the weather in the eastern part of the United States.
Yes, absolutely. And it looks like the first on the hit parade with that will be the Florida Peninsula, or if you will, the Bahamas. And then after that, the question is, where does it go? And that's why we think that the front is going to be important, because the front may serve as the pathway for that system as it goes either north or northeast or northeast during the course of the middle and latter part of next week.
Right. So the ridge in the Atlantic is one player in all of this, and the other player, of course, is the westerly flow from Canada and how far south it can get. Because if it can nudge that front far enough east, it won't be a problem north of the Carolinas. And then, of course, the other issue is with respect to Florida, because it does seem as if that this thing is going to wind up going into the uh, easternmost Gulf of Mexico and perhaps riding up the west side of Florida. And there's a lot of uncertainty. As we'll bring them up in a few minutes with the hurricane tracking models. The first run of them was this afternoon. There's a very wide spread from east to west as far as where the track, how this thing is going to track, and then there's also a spread on how, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about a tropical depression? Are we talking about a tropical storm? Could we be talking possibly about a hurricane? A lot of balls in the air tonight.
Well, if it does get a name, we're up to the D on the list, and that would be Debbie, Debi, and we'll see how this all plays out. But one way or another, Joe, I think that there's an increasing threat that the folks down in Florida are going to get drenched again, thanks to this tropical system by sometime early to middle part of next week.
Oh yeah, no, no, rain is going to be a big deal here. Welcome tonight to everybody on the chat board, and for those of you who are not on the chat board but watching and lurking about in the background, we welcome you too to the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which is on Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. The occasional Friday and Saturday, if there are storms around, and right now there's no plan to add a show either tomorrow or Saturday, but we will be back Sunday at 7:35 p.m. Subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss us. Turn your notifications on. And of course, if you like the show, hit that like button. So, do you want to do the tropical system first, or do we want to go through the local, what's going on right now everywhere
Yeah,
else, and then come back to it? You tell me.
I think it's cut and dry about what we're expecting locally for the next few days. You said it at the very onset of the show. We'll say it again that it looks like if you're hoping for a break in terms of the humidity, if you're hoping for a break in terms of the heat, well, actually, I think because of the fact that we're anticipating maybe a little bit more in the way of cloud cover over the weekend, while as tomorrow we probably will get to or above 90, I think on Saturday and Sunday just very muggy or very warm, upper 80s to near 90. But the humidity will remain high, and the threat of shower and scattered thunderstorm activity, small chance late tomorrow, better chance of afternoon and evening storms and showers on Saturday and Sunday. And of course, any singular shower or storm could bring down or put down a heavy amount of rain in a relatively short interval of time. And actually, Joe, after that, I think what we're looking at for a good part of next week is a continuation of, well, actually, the humidity is still going to be high on Monday. I think we may actually see the temperatures dip, maybe a dent in the dew points and humidities Tuesday through Thursday of next week. But I don't really see all that much of a threat in terms of showers. I think we may actually see mainly dry conditions for next week, and temperatures maybe not as high, upper 80s on Monday, and probably somewhere in the low to mid 80s for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week. So a little bit of a change next week. But if you have any plans out of doors this weekend, be prepared because it looks like, again, afternoon, evening hours, Saturday and Sunday especially, could be a few showers or thunderstorms to deal with.
The only thing I would just disagree with you on slightly is the fact tomorrow. I think it's more than just a slight chance that there'll be some thunderstorms around, but um, they got this upper trough coming through first, and then you got the cold
Yeah,
front coming through on Saturday.
I don't think though tomorrow the threat will be quite as high as what we'll see. I don't like to put percentages down, but if I had to put a percentage down, I'd say 30 to 40% tomorrow and something like 40 to 60% for Saturday and Sunday. So yeah, the threat will be
No,
there tomorrow.
I think Saturday is the probably certainly going to would be more robust than Friday.
Yeah,
And then
I
Sunday with
agree.
that stall front, who knows, that could be interesting in and of itself. And of course, what this tropical system does and how the ridge offshore behaves and the ridge that's in the southwest behaves will determine where we're going with all of this next week. So I guess the answer to the question is, let's start with the tropics first.
Yeah, because I think it'll be. I know my daughter is especially interested because she's going to go on a cruise to Bermuda next week with some
Well,
of her friends. A
what?
pre-wedding a pre-wedding get together,
Well,
and
when next week?
August 6th through August the 10th.
The sixth is what? Tuesday?
Six is yeah, blah blah blah. Yeah,
Tuesday.
Tuesday through Saturday.
All right. And you
I
have
told her
a
that you may not have a. I said you may not have a problem getting there, but coming back, uh, even if it doesn't go directly toward Bermuda, if it stays close to the, it's still probably going to be a storm that's going to be strong enough to churn up the seas. I said there may be some uh, significant sea swells and rough sea conditions, and I said I hope the ship that you're going on has good stabilizers, or else it's going to be, the episode with Fred Mertz on the Staten Island ferry.
all right. Here's the latest satellite loop, and you see the clouds with the somewhat disorganized, but I've noticed you know uh, late this afternoon and this evening there's just ever so slightly there's a little bit of maybe some sort of mid-level turning going on. Also, it seems that some of the let me see if I can put the lightning strike one with the lightning strikes on it, and maybe that'll give a clue. In terms of the convection, it's still pretty disorganized. We don't see, there's a cluster of thunderstorms. You can see a cluster of thunderstorms on the eastern side of this tropical wave, and there's also a little cluster uh, north of Haiti, well north of Haiti, going into the eastern Bahamas. So we don't have a low level circulation yet, but we do have an area that seems to be getting a little more concentrated as far as the shower and thunderstorm activity, and it's just moving along on a west northwest course. Now, while most of the action is in terms of showers and storms is over the Greater Antilles, and if you don't know what the Greater Antilles are, those are the big islands here, the Dominican Republic, Cuba, Puerto Rico. And while this thing is traversing west northwestward and going over these islands, you're not going to get much development. It's when it moves toward the Florida Straits and into the eastern Gulf of Mexico, assuming it gets there, that you'll probably start to see this thing try to organize. And there are going to be issues with proximity to land and a few other things. But the wave, certainly from what we saw a couple of days ago, where we could barely find convection, let alone clouds, uh, it's starting to gel up a bit as it moves on to the west northwest. So I don't think. Let me just see if they updated it. They'll probably certainly they'll update it before we. Oh, they did update it. So now they have a 40% chance of development in the next 2 days and a 70% chance over the next seven. Uh, well-defined tropical wave producing a large area of disorganized showers and thunderstorms over Hispaniola, the southeastern Bahamas, and the adjacent waters of the southwestern Atlantic. The wave expected to move west-northwest near or over Cuba on Friday, then emerge over the Straits of Florida Friday night or Saturday. Were they did they like type? Were they watching the show and typing at the same time? I'm just asking for a friend. Environmental conditions are expected to be conducive for additional development after that time, and a depression is likely to form this weekend over the Straits of Florida or the Eastern Gulf near the Florida Peninsula. And they have a Noah Hunter Hurricane Hunter aircraft is scheduled to investigate the system on Friday if necessary. So um, here's the guidance, the hurricane track guides. This again was the first run this afternoon, so you don't have a lot. You don't have all the models here. After the next run, which is the 0Z run, which we won't have. It doesn't come out till after the show is over. Uh, we'll have many more, but you'll notice, Joe, there's all the tracks from these models that they generated this afternoon are all in the Gulf of Mexico, and there's a wide spread uh, as far as landfalls here along the Florida Big Bend to as far west as the Alabama-Florida border. Now, when we get the other models, there might be some other options, so we'll have to see how what they do. And then, of course, after that, it's the ones that go out far enough in time uh, do a sharp right turn into the Carolinas, and then northeast from there. But that's down the road into early. We got to get this. It's got to get into the Gulf of Mexico first, and we'll see what it does. And on the intensity guidance, uh, the vast majority of the models here, Joe, keep it as a tropical storm. There's three of them that two make it a Category 1 hurricane, and one of them makes it a Category 2 hurricane, almost a Category 3 uh, in 5 days.
Well, Rich
And
Rothmansky brings up a good point on the chat board. He says, keep in mind how warm the water temperatures are and could see some rapid development. I'm not sure about rapid development, but I'm willing to, bet that if this starts to form a circulation and starts to rev up, that it probably will reach hurricane strength. I don't think we're looking at the potential of a major hurricane, but I wouldn't be surprised if it got to a Cat 1, maybe a Cat 2, but so either a very strong tropical storm or a low class hurricane. That's what my
right.
feeling.
Well, the GFS has it pretty close to the west coast of Florida. So that would kind of argue against, if that's the track, that would probably argue against its being able to strengthen much because the proximity to both Florida and the circulation part of it still going over western Cuba is probably going to hinder it some. I mean, I'm looking at the upper air. I don't see any shear at all. I mean, from what I'm looking at here, uh, most of the winds in the upper atmosphere are pretty light. So if it were to get out a little further west into the Gulf of Mexico, then we might be talking a different story. I forgot what run it was of the GFS. One of the overnight runs had it like a 949 low, but it took it toward the western part of the Florida Panhandle. So it took a track in a way that it would stay over water and over a much longer period of time. So I suppose you could make the case that if the upper air conditions, if they're not hostile, and as Rich said, yes, the water is very warm. And I'll also go back to what happened with Beryl because the models didn't particularly handle the strengthening of Beryl very well at all. So I want to be a little careful here with regards to taking things off the table as far as how strong it will get or won't get. This is a very, know, Beryl was weird. So, and as you know, I'm a proponent of the idea that weird things keep happening here in the weather world. But looking at the upper air conditions, if it were to be further west off the Florida coast, I think that then you probably would have a shot at this becoming much, more than just a strong tropical storm or a Cat 1 hurricane.
And Dayshaw Stallings on our chat board. First of all, thank you very much for hitting Super Chat tonight, Dayshaw. He is asking, do you think it's going to be the same track as what Hurricane Donna was, or is it a little bit different? Well, as Joe mentioned at the start, Dayshaw, while the storm may come northward along that stalled weather front, if the upper level winds are in place, that should deflect the storm from going much further north than the Carolinas. If you recall, Donna came all the way up the coast, right up into the New York City metropolitan area, and I don't really see that. I think if anything, if it did come northward, it may get up to the Outer Banks of North Carolina and then begin to curve out away from the coast. So it does not look like one of those kind of storms. Also, at the same time that all this is happening, we've got high pressure that's going to be building in over the central and southern sections of Canada, which is going to be trying to push the first really legitimate dent or significant drop in the dew point temperatures into the northeastern United States, maybe even in the mid Atlantic, around the 8th, 9th, 10th of August. And as the storm, the tropical system, tries to come north and clashes with that air mass, that too may help to cause the storm to take a track more to the right. So, but again, we're talking now, 7, 8, 9, 10 days down the road, and so much can happen in the track of the storm. I mean, like for example, Joe's showing here on the screen right now. I mean, like some models have the storm going into the Gulf of Mexico, others have it along the southeast coastal plain of the United States. Still too early to really get a good handle on it until the storm really has developed more. I think by the time we get to Sunday or Monday, the models will be able to get all on the same page and pretty well, forecast where this is eventually going to go. But right now, still a little too far off in the distance for us to be really specific.
Well, this is the GFS for Monday morning, okay? And on this particular run, the system gets caught up in the flow that is turning northwest in the upper atmosphere, and those northwesterly winds in the upper atmosphere go as far south as Virginia. So if that's the case, and they just pretty much stay like that, uh, one of two things will happen. If you look at what this particular run did, it kind of left it there off the north. It was very strange. It just kind of leaves it off the North Carolina coast into the middle of next week, and it's at this point where on this run where it made it a hurricane, and it actually brought it inland near Wilmington. So it sort of argues here on this run that the westerlies don't get far enough south to kick it out, but there's nothing in the upper flow to pull it all the way up the eastern seaboard. You don't have a deep trough to the west of it. You have a ridge there. So it just sort of hangs around until, until such time that it starts to get some steering from the Atlantic ridge that builds back westward in the middle of next week, and it goes into North Carolina. Now that's that run. All right. So let's look at the European. Well, even before we look at the European, I want to look at the Canadian. The Canadian, for what it's worth,
It's
uh,
faster.
well, it's
Sorry,
faster,
go ahead.
and it's got it. It has it. It takes it right up along the west coast of Florida, barely offshore. That little circle you see there is the tropical feature, and it brings it into North Carolina, and then it tries to bring down another short wave right in here. This right in here, there's another short wave that comes down, and that sort of picks it up and kicks it out to the east northeast off the exiting out at North Carolina and then moving out to the east northeast. And I imagine that if this were to verify, you probably wouldn't be dealing with a strong system because of the fact that the track coming up the west coast of Florida is right along the land, and it develops into it's like a tropical storm maybe, or a strong tropical depression, or a tropical storm, and then it brings the rains up into the Carolinas. We've got a front that comes down from the north, and that sort of pushes it out. Then it really gets going once it goes east northeast of the open waters of the Atlantic. So that's the Canadian. The European, to me, which has been pretty much uh, wrong, trying to keep it off the east coast of Florida, barely does anything with it. I mean, you can sort of find it here over Florida. There's a little closed isobar there east of Tampa, but it really doesn't develop anything. Finally, it pops up a low inland near Jacksonville, Savannah, and then it just leaves it there. It leaves it off the North Carolina coast to make it rain for days and days and days as a tropical storm. So you have that, and we might as well look at the icon just to give us another point of view. And here's the icon, which starts it out over western Cuba and then takes it. It's a little more offshore, but still fairly close to the west coast of Florida. Comes inland, and then it just sort of sits there. All the models seem to want to make it sit someplace. Okay, these particular runs have gone further east and northeast to make it sit somewhere along the Carolina coast or the Georgia coast, with heavy rains there. So there's too much variability. It's way too early. There's too many. There's a lot of there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle that we need to resolve. How strong is the ridge off the east coast? How strong is the ridge that's to the west of it? And those westerlies coming down, how far south do they get? So you're not going to get that question answered today, and
No, you're not.
you're not. You're just
You're
not.
not. No.
Okay, it's
So
just not. It's not going to happen. But there's your 50 dew point line, Joe, right to New York City on Tuesday. Look at that. Look how close the 50 a dew point of 59 is, if only fleetingly. And then it goes up and out, and it's back into the dew points into the 70s later next week.
I said Tuesday. It looks like we have a chance for. I won't say less humid air. I won't say not. I'd say not quite as humid as recent days. But I think if we do get that, you will feel it. You will feel a noticeable change because you've become so acclimated to the dreck that we've had for so many days that even though it may not get into the 50s, if it drops into the low 60s, that'll be an improvement over what we've had over the past week or so.
Oh, and by the way, if you believe the 12Z GFS, there is a nice push of dry air with 40 dew points coming on Monday, August the 12th. Okay. And then there's another even bigger push that comes down and gets all the way down to the southeastern part of the United States on Saturday, August the 17th. I wouldn't necessarily write those dates down and put them in your calendars as definites. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
But it's kind of interesting that the models keep trying to bring troughs in that northwest flow, I mean, eventually, once we get deep enough into the month, one of them is going to be real. You would think.
You would.
You would. All right, let's go back to what's going on now, where we've got the hot, humid weather. Not much in the way of thunderstorm activity tonight up on the East Coast. There's actually a line of storms that's moving through western South Carolina and parts of Georgia, but it seems to be weakening now. Also, some scattered storms in Florida. Then you got this upper trough where you have more numerous showers and thunderstorms coming out of Indiana and moving across Kentucky and Ohio tonight. And there's a nice little rotation there. So that trough's going to be closer to the East Coast tomorrow, which is why I think tomorrow you probably you're going to definitely have a higher chance for storms than today, and then we're going to have chances even higher on Saturday. This is what it looks like on the radar tonight. We've got a few severe thunderstorm warnings in Kentucky, and also some flash flood warnings. Also, some big storms up in Wisconsin, where we're seeing several flash flood warnings up over there. Storm Prediction Center has this area of slight risk in Ohio, Kentucky, and southern Indiana. We have a severe thunderstorm. Maybe I'll just update this. Some of the Weather Service websites today have been acting a little bit screwy.
Funky.
Uh, yes, it looks like we have two severe thunderstorm watches. So let's see if I can bring them up this way. Um, Not even this map doesn't look right. Where's the box? Oh, there it is. So this watch is, uh, excuse me, southern Indiana, southeast Illinois, and southwest Ohio, and into Kentucky. And the next watch is to the east of that, that goes into the southwestern part of West Virginia and a couple of counties in Western Virginia. Now, as far as tomorrow is concerned, at least for now, SPC has pushed the marginal risk up central Long Island to about Route 84 across northern Pennsylvania, northern Ohio, and Indiana, and southward into the southeastern part of the U.S. I'm thinking they might add a little area of slight risk tomorrow for this.
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah, it does.
I also think they might nudge the marginal risk a little further north than where they have it.
Well, we said
And
yesterday, just by sheer extrapolation, you would think that by the time we got to the weekend, Saturday, we'd get into the area of marginal risk, and that certainly shows for the Saturday outlook, and it probably will be the same for Sunday. It will probably be in marginal risk once again.
Saturday, SPC has the marginal risk into western Connecticut and up to the middle Hudson Valley, almost to the upper Hudson Valley in Long Island, southward down to Georgia. And here too, I think we could see them adding an area of slight risk. Also, we've got a marginal risk in parts of Minnesota and the Dakotas, the eastern Dakotas. So we'll see what they do with this. And rainfall, they're actually quite generous with the rain over the next 7 days, is showing, and most of it is going to be, through at least through Sunday. So this is front end loaded. But they've got now 1.5 to 2.5 inch rain amounts for eastern Pennsylvania to western Long Island, the Hudson Valley, western Connecticut, and bigger rains along the southeast coast. And in Florida, along the Florida west coast, that yellow area is a 10-inch plus area that touches the coastline, but a rather generous area of 7 to 10 inches that is indicated for the west coast of Florida. And that goes, the 5-inch line goes almost all the way down to the Keys. And it makes sense. I mean, if you're going to have a tropical system like this coming up the west coast, it's not going to develop, uh, or if it's going to have trouble strengthening into something beyond a tropical storm, the big deal here is going to wind up being the rain.
And that's, again, with this tropical air mass that's in place, if you do end up under one of these particular showers or storms, you could get drenched in a very short interval of time because, again, the air is that humid out there. It's going to be that way until, as we just alluded to a few moments ago, maybe not until Tuesday when things start to drop off a little bit.
Right. And the usual rule applies that we use in the summertime in these situations. You see a smoothed out area of rainfall forecast, and locally you could wind up with 50 or even 100% higher amounts. In other words, double the amounts that are being forecast if you wind up with a cluster of storms or one very stubborn thunderstorm that takes forever to get out of the way. So that possibility exists over the weekend, which is why I think you've got WPC. This is the flash flood risks for tonight, which correspond with the severe weather risk in the Ohio Valley up to the lower lakes. Tomorrow, we've got the marginal risk to New York City, Western Mass, Southern Vermont, then cutting westward across Lake Ontario, back across Michigan. A slight risk area in northwest New Jersey and much of northeastern Pennsylvania to the Catskills. Also, a slight risk from southeastern Michigan and western Ohio down into eastern Kentucky, eastern Tennessee, and western North Carolina. And on day three, and this would be for Saturday into Sunday, a large area of marginal risk from South Carolina to New Hampshire, back to western Pennsylvania and eastern Ohio, also a marginal risk for much of central and southern Florida. And that, of course, will be the beginnings of that particular tropical system. So, at least on the latest run, here comes the upper trough for tomorrow. And the GFS is somewhat generous with some shower and thunderstorm activity tomorrow evening from southeastern New England down into North Carolina and west into the Ohio Valley. Then that goes out. Then you got the front approaching on Saturday, and this is where you've got the chance for showers and thunderstorms from Maine all the way down to the Florida Panhandle. And now you got the tropical system there in the Florida Straits coming into the Gulf of Mexico. The front hangs on along the coast. The front's like this, somewhere like that. And along that frontal boundary, you're going to get some showers and storms that might form on Sunday. And then after that, assuming that northwest pushes, as soon as those northwest winds in the upper atmosphere could get far enough south and start to push the flow up from the northwest, another front comes Monday night, and then of course you've got this tropical system sitting off the South Carolina coast there, and then sort of meandering along the coastline. That'll be interesting if this winds up being correct. That's not going to be an easy thing to forecast. And as you said, there's a high, nice high that builds up into eastern Canada that's going to try to suppress it. And as long as those northwest winds in the upper atmosphere gain firm control, I would think the East Coast, the northern Mid-Atlantic states up into New England are not going to have a problem with this.
We hope.
Yeah. I mean, the only other option is if it winds up going further west, uh, where it takes rain up, say, let's say if it were to go, say, in western Florida and then head up into the Tennessee Valley, then it might hook up with the front coming down from the northwest and turn eastward and bring some rain in from the southwest as a remnant system. But that and a couple of runs have shown that, but not the last few runs have not. So, I'm sure we're going to be going. This is going to be going back and forth and sideways for the next 3 days. So by the time we get back here on Sunday at 7:35 p.m., we will of course have the definitive answer about what is going to happen, aren't we, Joe?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely correct. Speaking of definitive answers, I have the definitive answers for tonight's Griller Jeopardy.
Well, we've already taken care, I think, of July. Now we're into August. My guess is that the chairman has provided you with average mean high temperatures for August for a number of different cities.
Well, it is August, but not for different cities. It's all New York focused today. So our first question tonight, hands on buzzers, everybody. What is the highest temperature ever in August in New York City?
You got to figure that August it's still hot enough so that we would have a temperature in the triple digits. So I will say 102.
102 is a little too low. The answer, Craig Carlberg nails it right off the bat at 104. 104. And
Frank,
uh, and
104.
that and that was set back on August the 7th, 1918.
Wow, can you imagine living in 1918, the temperature hits 104, and there's no way that you can cool yourself off to any degree? How did they?
I don't
Oh,
know. Well, it was a far less urban place then than it is now. But still, 104 is 104. What was the lowest temperature ever in the month of August?
I would think it would be toward the end of the month, and I would probably go with a temperature of about 54 degrees.
Uh, Not low enough. Not low
Really?
enough.
Well, we didn't get into
Yeah,
the 40s, did we?
we did not get into the 40s. Not 37. No, no. Michael McGuire is very close at 51. Uh, Lord Cates got 52. Frank Scalera 51. Want to take a stab at it?
50?
And 50 it is, Joe Rayo. And actually, this happened in our lifetime. This was on August 29th, 1986.
Wow. You'd think I would remember something like that.
Yes. Now, what was the coldest daytime high, the lowest high? And this is another
Can
one
I,
that was in our actually in our more recent lifetime.
can I say 59?
You may ring the bell. It's 59.
Wow, okay.
And that 59 was on August 21st, 2007.
Boy, that recent, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking if that's the lowest daytime high, it must have been one of those days where it was a cloudy day with a northeast wind with a cool Canadian high to the north, and you had no sun at all. Because I can't imagine it would have been a mostly sunny day with a high of just 59. It had to be a cloudy, raw, rainy type of day. What was the greatest rainfall for the month of August in Central Park?
I think that had to do with hurricane or tropical storm. I think it was a tropical storm by the time it got up here. Irene in 2011. I think we probably had something like 6.5 inches of rain.
Right, but the monthly total, it
Oh, the
was
monthly total.
right, the
I
monthly
think that
total.
I think that too,
Right.
because of Irene and also because of another system that came several days later, Lee. The combination of those two systems, we had something like 11.8 inches of rain in the month of August. Does that sound
At
right?
18.95.
18.95 was that,
Wait,
but that was
hold on.
2011.
Yeah, 2011, 18.95. That is the
Wow.
greatest monthly rainfall um, for the month of
I think that was
August.
actually Joe. If I now that it's all
Very
coming
good,
back,
Frank Scalera, by the way.
that's the wettest month. That's the most precipitation ever recorded
Yeah.
in Central Park for any month of the year.
hmm
Wow.
I remember Irene. I don't remember Lee a few days later, or however many days later it
Lee
was.
was Lee was only exasperated what exacerbated exa- it only made things worse in the aftermath of what we received from Irene. The last thing we needed was another system to bring another heavy dosage of rain, and that's exactly what happened. Lee came by, I think, like 4 or 5 days later, and it was terrible.
Yep. All right, I think we're going to wrap it up. By the way, before we do, uh, it's not your birthday tomorrow.
It is.
Tomorrow is Joe's birthday. So we want to wish Joe a very, very happy birthday.
I
Very,
posted on Facebook. I don't know if you saw this. I posted on Facebook.
yeah, I did see it.
There are
Got
very
your
few things.
memory.
There are very few things in life, aside from, let's say, the Kennedy assassination or the Challenger blowing up, but I mean in your life that you will remember. And for me, believe it or not, August the 1st, 60 years ago, I remember going to the New York World's Fair with my mom, my sister, and my grandparents. And the reason why I mention it, well, the reason why I remember it was what date it was. First of all, we didn't drive in. There was a bus, an express bus in Throgs Neck that would take you directly to the entrance of the fair, which we took full advantage of. And I remember that day very well. We were on a number of different rides and exhibits. The Chrysler exhibit, they had 1964 Chrysler cars. My grandfather said, "Go ahead, sit behind the wheel." And it was a conveyor belt. So I did, it's not like driving around. But I mean, it was like, I remember that. I remember there was here's one for you, Joe. I think it was National Cigar. They had an exhibit where they shot up into space 12-foot cigar rings or smoke rings that went
Oh,
100.
nice.
Uh, they had the Tower of Light with the at that time, the most potent light beam that was illuminated by this very unusual structure that was composed of glass prisms and whatever. But the thing I remember the most, and it was the thing that my grandmother insisted that we go see, was the Pietà. The Pietà, which you can go, if you go to Rome, you can see it today.
Which
The,
I haven't did, but go on.
the Pietà, a statue that Michelangelo had made of Christ, the Virgin Mary holding Christ after he came off of the cross in her arms. And this was what a coup it was for the New York World's Fair to convince Italy, Vatican, to ship that or put that in a crate on a ship and bring it to the U.S., where it was on display for 2 years at the New York World's Fair. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was in a dark room with a spotlight. There were like three different belts where you could stand on, and you literally were moved on this belt past the statue. And my grandmother, I remember she said to me, she whispered in my ear, says, "I hope you remember this for the rest of your life." And I did. I remembered it. And in 1972, when it was back in Italy, you may remember, Joe, some hammer waving nut
Yes, yeah.
and knocked the nose of the Virgin Mary off. They had to very, very carefully and tediously replace it or reform the nose. And then they put it in a bulletproof,
Bulletproof
shattered
thing, yeah.
glass case. I mean, but when I saw it, when it was here in New York, there was no case, there was nothing, because in those days, a different society, a different
People didn't
brand,
do that sort of thing.
you didn't do that sort of thing. That was, what are you, crazy? And so you were able to actually physically get up close to this amazing piece of art. And I remember that. And the reason why I remember it was the day before my birthday. We went back to get the bus. It was late at night. We had spent the whole day at the fair. We were waiting online to get on the bus. I asked my grandfather what time it was. He looked at his watch and he said, "It's now 12 midnight." And I said, "It's 12 midnight. It's my birthday now." Now it was August the 2nd. And I looked around to people who were waiting online with us. And I said, "Now I'm 8 years old." And there was like a little smattering of applause from the people who were waiting online for the bus.
Nice.
And it's, as I said in my Facebook, it's so disconcerting to realize that that was 6 decades ago. That was 60 years ago tonight. And yet I remember it like it was yesterday. Anyway, thank you for the birthday greetings and for the birthday super chat hits to Chuck Cardillo, to Michael McGuire, uh, and I think that's, yeah, to Chuck and Mike,
And then earlier we
Maggie
had
P.
uh, uh, Maggie P.
Yeah,
Yes, Maggie P. Chuck Cardillo, Michael McGuire, and Deshaun Stallings.
right.
So thank you for hitting the super chat, and also happy birthday, Mr. Rayo. And may you have many more, because we're booked. So don't plan on going everywhere, because you've got a Sunday through Thursdays at 7:35 p.m. Besides, you can't go
Lord,
until I go
Lord
first.
Kate
But
on the chat board. Is this true, Lord Kate? Are you pulling our leg? Lord Kate, Joe R. I was 36 years old. 36 in 1964. That means that you're 96 now? Is that I guess that's true. Lord Kate says yes. Wow.
oh, God bless.
God bless you, Lord
God
Kate.
bless.
Yes.
No, negative 36 he was.
Negative 36.
Negative 36.
No, negative 36.
Right. Which means he was born in 96. Well, no, I'm sorry. What year was this we're talking about, Joe?
1964.
64. So he was born in the year 2000. So he's only 20. He's only 24.
Well, Cecilia Hernandez says, Lord K to you in your 90s, and Lord Kate said yes.
Well,
This
negative
is
36, he says. Frank
negative.
Scalera, thank you for hitting a super chat as well.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you.
All right, the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast brought to you by Tempest by WeatherFlow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system. Join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is on the description to this podcast. Use the coupon code.
Summer 2024.
If you do, you will get
10% off. And one final thank you to Brandon Doherty, who also hit the chat board. Thank you, Brandon.
All right, folks, unless the world comes to an end, we'll be back on Sunday at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time. Have a great Friday and a great weekend. We'll see you Sunday night. Night, night.
Nighty night, folks.